Hi, it's Anne, the ambassador of ease, coming to you from a place and space of ease and grace. I want to share with you one of the most unusual and perhaps easiest things that ever happened to me. One day I was walking through my kitchen and I heard a voice said, "Would you like to write a children's book?" And I said, "What would it be about?" And the voice said in a humorous voice, kind of laughed, and it said, "Why, it would be about Mrs. Dominoes, of course." And I said, "Sure." So I ran, got a pen and paper, stood in my kitchen, and wrote the story of Mrs. Dominoes. So here it is, the story that I took down. It's the wacky world of Mrs. Dominoes. Mrs. Dominoes was the nicest woman anyone would ever hope to meet. But one tiny itsy bitty thing you should know, Mrs. Dominoes was weird. She looked weird, dressed weird, and did the weirdest things. Her face was a little too white and her nose was a little too long. Her straight white hair was twisted in a bun and it looked like a baked potato sitting on her head. But the weirdest thing of all, the thing you could never guess, was that Mrs. Dominoes had polka dot eyes. Mrs. Dominoes was old, very old, and she was only 4 feet tall. She wore a bright purple coat and a green hat all the time, even when it was hot. Yet, to be honest, Mrs. Dominoes was, without question, the happiest person in the world. One smile from Mrs. Dominoes aimed in your direction would make you smile too. Every day, Mrs. Dominoes got up at 7 a.m., watered her plants, practiced karate, ate breakfast, and at precisely 8 a.m., she and her black and white houndstooth check dog, Henry, went for a walk. She and Henry were polite. Oh, so polite. They strolled through the neighborhood and Mrs. Dominoes tipped her hat to the neighbors and Henry wagged his tail in the friendliest of ways. If you were lucky, and Mrs. Dominoes always walked in the luckiest neighborhoods, Mrs. Dominoes would smile in your direction. And no matter how yucky you felt, no matter how tired you were, no matter what was wrong, you would suddenly feel wonderful and you would smile too. One day, the absolute wackiest thing happened. When Mrs. Dominoes and Henry were on their morning walk, the sleeves on Mrs. Dominoes' coat lit up. It was not a bright light, and in the morning, no one probably saw it, but Mrs. Dominoes saw it. And for the first time ever, Mrs. Dominoes and Henry did not complete their morning walk. Mrs. Dominoes looked around, and when she saw no one, she turned, pulled on Henry's leash, and ran for home. Mrs. Dominoes did not want anyone to know her secret, and it was a big secret. It was the biggest secret Mrs. Dominoes had kept in her whole life. Her secret may have been the biggest, most important secret in the world. Everyone knows how hard it is to keep a secret. It feels like having a big bird sitting on your chest that you can't talk about. But Mrs. Dominoes never, ever told anyone her secret. No one could ever guess the secret. No one would ever guess it. But I'm going to tell this secret because that one day, that one sunlit morning, when I was behind the bushes getting my ball, I saw a spectacular and most unexpected event. I saw the sleeves on Mrs. Dominoes' coat light up. Fortunately, Mrs. Dominoes didn't see me, and as she and Henry hurried home, I followed from behind, making sure neither Mrs. Dominoes nor Henry could see me. For you see, it was most important for a curious girl like me to find out why Mrs. Dominoes' sleeves lit up. Mrs. Dominoes and Henry entered their house, and I sneaked to the back and peeked in the window. The window was open, and I could see Mrs. Dominoes and her coat, and the most astonishing thing was happening. If I had not seen this, I would not have believed it to be true. Mrs. Dominoes had taken her purple coat and green hat off, and they were standing up in mid-air, and Mrs. Dominoes was fussing at the coat. It was crystal clear that Mrs. Dominoes had a magic coat and hat, and that she was upset with her coat for lighting up in public. I have never seen anything like this, and I don't know how it could be true, but Mrs. Dominoes' coat looked ashamed. Tell me, how is this possible? In this whole world, have you ever seen a coat that looked ashamed? Not only was the coat ashamed, the coat had a name. The coat was named Hilda. The hat bounced up and down as Mrs. Dominoes fussed at Hilda, and while I was looking, and I promise you this happened, sad eyes popped out on the side of the hat. "Polly," Mrs. Dominoes said, "don't look at me with those sad eyes." I was shocked to find that the hat had a name. Polly kept looking at Mrs. Dominoes. Then tears streamed down Polly's face. Mrs. Domino, who was the happiest person alive, couldn't bear to see Polly cry. So Mrs. Dominoes responded gently to Hilda the coat. "It's okay, Hilda. It wasn't that bad. No one saw you light up. But you must promise to never do it again when we're out." Polly the hat smiled, and Hilda the coat nodded, which was a sight to see. Have you ever seen a hat smile or a coat nod? I bet not. But Polly did smile, and Hilda did nod. Mrs. Dominoes and Hilda hugged, and when they hugged, Mrs. Dominoes' polka-dotted eyes, which could see 4 times clearer and 4 times more than regular eyes, spotted me in the window. "Anna!" Mrs. Dominoes cried out. "Don't move." My legs froze, and before I could count to 10, Mrs. Dominoes was beside me, looking down with those polka-dotted eyes. My face turned red, and I pleaded, "Mrs. Dominoes, I'm sorry, but who can blame a little girl for being curious? After all, when a little girl sees someone's green coat sleeves light up, the only thing she can do is follow them home." Mrs. Dominoes looked at me and said, "I guess you're right, Anna." Mrs. Dominoes' frown turned upside down, and suddenly she was smiling. "I couldn't keep this secret forever, but Anna, you must promise to never tell, because if anyone finds out, we would have to move far away. People would follow us, and we would have to live our lives on the run." "I promise not to tell, Mrs. Dominoes." Mrs. Dominoes smiled and said, "Please come in and meet my friends." I followed Mrs. Dominoes. Hilda and Polly were lying on the sofa like a normal coat and hat should do. Mrs. Dominoes winked one eye, tapped her big toe, and the hat and coat came alive. They ran to hide. Mrs. Dominoes told them that there was no need to be afraid. "This is Anna. You remember Anna." Hilda bowed and Polly blinked her eyes. "They like you," Mrs. Dominoes announced. Polly blinked her eyes again, and Hilda jumped up and down as if she wanted to say something. Of course, a coat and hat can't talk, but Mrs. Dominoes knew exactly what they wanted. Mrs. Dominoes smiled. "Anna, they want to play with you." "What?" I said. "They have seen you playing when we passed by on our daily walks. They know you like to play. What kind of games do they play? I asked. They love hide and seek, Mrs. Dominoes replied. Okay, let's play. Hilda darted out of sight. I counted slowly from 1 to 10 and then shouted, Ready or not, here I come. For the next hour, we played hide and seek. They were quite good. They hid in the coat closet, under the bed, in the attic, and in the basement. One time I could not find her. Then I heard a voice. I'm under the sofa. It was a strange sounding voice. It sounded like a duck, but I knew it was Polly. I'd seen many things in my life, but never a talking, quacking hat. Mrs. Dominoes, I shouted. Polly, the hat, can talk. Yes, Anna, Polly is a quacker. She sounds like a duck and quacks when she talks. Hilda can talk too. Neither one of them said anything until they were sure it wouldn't scare you. And then a curious thing happened. The coat spoke and said, Anna, can I try you on? What? I gasped. Mrs. Dominoes replied, She wants to wear you. She thinks when you put her on that she is wearing you. Okay, I said. I like Hilda and I'm happy for her to wear me. Hilda the coat gently slid over my arms and the most phantasmagorical thing happened. Hilda began to light up. She turned green, yellow, blue, red, and orange, and as she lit up, I was lifted off the floor in a most magical way, and soon we were flying around the room. Hilda the coat started laughing, Mrs. Dominoes started laughing, Polly the hat started laughing, and I laughed so hard that I fell out of the coat and onto the carpet. But when I hit the floor, there was no loud sound or knock. I landed softly. I thought I was seeing things. Maybe I did hit my head when I fell. Maybe I was loopy. But I know what happened. The carpet caught me. Mrs. Dominoes had a magic carpet. The carpet hugged me and put me down. Mrs. Dominoes, I explained, you have a magic carpet too? What other magic friends are there? Oh dear, Mrs. Dominoes was shaken. This secret was so big. Would a little girl, Anna, understand? Could Anna keep a secret? Mrs. Dominoes gave in. I will tell you, Anna, but you must promise to never tell anyone. You must pinky swear. Anna's eyes grew wide. She would do anything to know Mrs. Dominoes' secret. I will pinky swear if you promise to let me come back and visit. Mrs. Dominoes agreed, and soon they hooked their pinkies. Anna said, I will never tell your secret, Mrs. Dominoes. Never, never, never. Even if someone bangs my fingers, pulls my toes, or screams at me, I will never tell. Mrs. Dominoes was happy not to be the only one who knew the big secret. She and Anna shared a secret, and it made them feel like good buddies. Let's go, Anna, said Mrs. Dominoes. I will introduce you to all my magic friends. She took me to the refrigerator, winked one polka-dotted eye, tapped her big toe on the floor, and the refrigerator came to life. It was as if it was like he'd been asleep, but when Mrs. Dominoes winked her polka-dotted eye and tapped her big toe, he woke up. This is Ralph the refrigerator. Ralph winked at me. It was hard to believe. Ralph the refrigerator had eyes. She came to the stove, winked her polka-dotted eye, and tapped her big toe, and Sally Stove woke up. Every time Mrs. Dominoes winked her polka-dotted eye and tapped her toe, another piece of furniture or thing came to life. There was Tina table, Chester chair, Hermione hairbrush, and Tom television. Each one of my new friends was amazing, They bowed or wiggled or smiled to welcome me into their magic, wonderful world. There was Barbara Bed, Charles Chest of Drawers, and Sally Sink. There was Tommy Tub and Carter Commode. Soon everything was alive, even Harry House. I couldn't remember all the names, but I knew I would come back again and again to Mrs. Domino's magic house and play with all my new friends and eventually learn their names. That day, which was the best day of my life, I discovered Mrs. Domino's secrets. And if this happened to you, if you lived in a wacky world like Mrs. Domino's, if you lived in a magical house with magical clothes, magical furniture, and a magical stove, and had polka-dotted eyes, and a black and white houndstooth dog named Henry, and a loyal friend named Anna, you might be wacky too. The end.